everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host, and our guest this week is Rushab. Is it Rushab or Rushab?
Rushab, yeah.
Rushab,
yeah.
okay.
Spot on.
Right, Rushab Shah. Rushab is a co-founder and an entrepreneur of a company called TutorHive.
Correct.
TutorHive. Yeah. And he's going to tell us a bit about it. And just before we came on camera, you might look at TutorHive and think that it's an educational business, but it's actually a tech platform. It's a very, very solid tech platform. And Rushab has an amazing story which he's going to share with us. So Rushab, welcome to Against All Odds.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate having me on and love the show and what it's about. So looking forward to share a little bit.
Fantastic. So let's just delve a little bit into your background to get some context to our conversation. Because you grew up in the northwest London.
Yeah, northwest London.
And I mean, what was it like growing up, in your home? Because obviously there are certain, if you look at people who do well in the BAME sort of demographic, you tend to find a lot of Asians and a lot of Nigerians as well. So I'm not quite sure if there's something. I know that I'm told that Asians have a very high, you've got to do well.
Yeah.
There's that expectation from home. So tell us a bit about your background and if there's anything that was instilled in you earlier on.
So I think it's an interesting one because that whole point of why are Asian or Nigerian families so driven, motivated. I think it comes down to the fact that my parents were the first generation to the UK.
Okay.
And then they
East Africa or
so the classic.
Okay.
When the Brits left India, all the Indians in Gujarat moved over to the east coast of Africa. It's a shipway, easy across the Indian Ocean. Had the British passport, did well because they were quite business savvy, and they just work, right? And so that culture and that approach came in with that first generation. So when you have that mindset, that ethos, I had dad work 6 days a week, used to run a clothing business on Portobello Road.
Okay.
Mum would be there half the week as well. She'd be there, she'd be cooking, ferrying me around to all the extracurricular. It was proper, through and through. It was you're doing school, and then every day there'd be an after school activity. You'd be playing sports. You're expected to get your A's and A stars. You're active. You've got a big social life. Families are quite big. So I'm an only child, so it's a bit odd, but extended family, there's always stuff going on. So you don't really have the downtime when you're sat there just playing PlayStation. You're always active. You always got, and that's the norm. So your default when you're growing up, from the age of as long as I can remember, would be there's always something to do, an activity. There'd be times where there'd be two activities in the evening. I'd literally be eating pasta in the car, right? And Mum would be alright. We go from here to there. You go from swimming to tennis, or you go from swimming to speech and drama, or to football, whatever it was. So there's an underlying motivation and drive to succeed and do well. And I think there's the chip on the shoulder element. Times are tough whenever they did come over in the 70s. You had a lot of racism and all that. So they just grafted through that. But because it was a large community, I think there was this element that we kind of lack now, where people were looking out for their own or for each other. And especially when you're quite a big immigrant community in northwest London, especially Asians who come from east coast of Africa, you look after each other. You make sure that everyone's okay. And the strength of that helps that whole community. And if you look at, the demographic now of how well British Asians have done, typically the ones from the east coast of Africa, and you've had a few on the podcast I watched before, you can tell. You can tell because they've just been brought up differently. And then now it's, what does the next generation do? Do you do the whole, the parents wanted you to go and get a stable job, work in banking or finance, become a doctor or an engineer, whatever that sort of goal was? Or do you take that safety net and you go against it and take a risk?
So it sounds like you went to a private school or public school, because the reason I picked that up was the after school activities.
Wow.
And again, it goes down to the fact that first generation or Asian immigrants value education so much. I mean, you see people who maybe run a post office or a corner shop or whatever it is, but they'll do whatever it took to put their children through the best education possible. So I mean, maybe just tell us a little bit about that thinking of that generation of immigrants.
Look, when school for my parents was dad, who grew up in Voi. So Voi in Kenya is basically nearby Savo. So Savo's like where all the elephants are in Kenya, right?
Okay.
Literally 100 meters down the road, there'll be a giant bull elephant there, right? Okay. That's life. It's a very, very different thing to 100 meters down the road. You got a really nice restaurant. Chalk and cheese, right? Mum went to boarding school in India, just because that was the most affordable bit. But whenever she went, she would go take like some saris and this and that and go and sell it there to earn her keep. So she was actually, these guys went through a tough life. Education was never like a given. There was no education might have been free, but it was never just a convenience around the corner. So the value of education is so high, especially in Asians generally, but then also when you come over, it's like everything you want to do is to make sure your child has a better life. As a parent, well, I imagine I'm not a parent yet, but it's all about the child. And if the child, like and you feel that, especially because family's so strong, and that whole motif is, they've got to do well. So if you can't give the very best to your kid when you've not had the best, I think that motivation is work hard for. That's exactly that point. Corner shop, post office, whatever it is, you're working 6-7 days a week, working on the weekends, taking maybe half a day off here and there, and it's just graft. And that's how it worked, right? A few of them actually then sort of realize, actually, no, I can do other stuff. I can go and invest in things. I can go and
property.
I can go and do this and that. And again, you start to learn that, but not everyone did, right? And so I think that whole element of pushing the best education, wanting the best, striving for the best, is almost why you now look at the demographic of private schools and a lot of Asians. They're like, we're going to spend the money on that as opposed to spend the money on a nice new car.
Okay.
Or I'm not going to have the luxurious Maldives holiday, which might cost the family $6,000. I'm going to actually say, that's going to my kids' education. And you'll make those sacrifices.
Okay.
And I think it's an interesting element, and it will be interesting to see how the next generation do it, because I think now there's almost this, it's not as it wasn't affordable then, but it was achievable, right? You could work hard and you could earn enough to send your kid to private school. Now the balances have changed, and it's only grammar schools that you can go, which is the same quality and of education, but also don't have the cost of private school. So and then the other alternative state schools, and they're failing. The reality is they're fundamentally just underfunded. They can't. So it's your choices as a parent you have to make. But I think deeming education to be really, really high is that advantage that those Asian parents want to give to their kids. It's ingrained in them.
Okay. Right, and then you moved on from there. You went to Warwick.
Yes.
What did you study in Warwick?
So I did mechanical engineering.
Wow. So how do you explain going for a mechanical engineering degree to being a co-founder of a tech platform? I don't get it.
There's a couple of key bits. So one of the joys of being at Merchant Taylor's private school was they did something called FAB, which is a residential week for where lower sixth and upper sixth students, so 17 and 18-year-olds, would pair up and they'd look after a kid for a week over Easter. Now that kid would have severe disabilities. Okay. So now you've got to put everything from changing the kid for their incontinent, make sure they've had their right food. If they are on medication, that you make sure that the kid's taking their medication. There's nurses there. There's like all the support framework around, staff there to support. But you are the primary caregiver. Okay. For a week. Okay. Giving respite to the parents, but also giving you the opportunity to actually just learn what the real world can be like. So that experience was huge for me. I took part in it at school. And then when I went to university, I got involved with a charity organisation, the same one, but set up a youth club for kids with disabilities. So this is interesting because Warwick is a bubble. But for those who know Warwick, it's actually just a random town called Royal Leamington Spa, inundated by students from Warwick, which is in Coventry, and that's it. There's literally not much else to do. You're Birmingham, but it's a bit far. It's like faff. So what you've got is this sort of interesting dilemma or sort of situation where the students are very isolated. You're not like you're in London or a big city where you come across different types of people, etc. So it's very bubbly, and
so not many distractions.
Not many distractions, but you create your own, right? Students, you make your own distractions. It's easy. So what I realised was if you could get the clubs and societies on campus to come along and deliver sessions. So we had the American football team bring in the pads and helmets to sessions to do a workshop on how to play. We got salsa society to come along and teach kids how to dance. The engineers brought 3D printing pens and all this cool tech for the kids to give it a go. And we found that worked incredibly well for twofold, because you get the students from campus experiencing different things, and the kids who typically spend a lot of time with carers, them being able to spend time with kids who are, young adults, like 20-year-olds, right? That's different, and doing different cool stuff. But what I realised from that point was, because you have quite a lot of churn of volunteers and different people every week, some of the kids wouldn't engage.
Okay.
And so that's where I was like, okay, part of running a youth club is you have a big old fat document folder full of all the stuff all the kid likes, or they don't like, or they can eat, what they can't eat, their pet's name, all that information is there. I ended up memorising it because I had to flick through it so many times. And what I started to do was strategically match certain volunteers with certain kids. If you're an engineer and that kid likes to dance a tank engine, I said, hey, go talk about trains to that kid. And then what you'd realise was that they would get on.
The bond better, yeah.
And we saw less churn of volunteers. We saw the kids engage more. It was phenomenal. So that concept that I was doing there was like, that was just that. I did that for like 5-6 years. So I did a year in industry, still helped out, and then I went into the engineering world and worked there for a few, like five years. Had a great time, and just kind of got pulled back into the education space when I met my co-founder, which kind of drove me to want to think, actually, this is a good idea. The concept that I kind of took back then could be applied on a grander scale. And then, last year with the advent of AI being really the focus, what everyone wanted to talk about, the way that we'd geared the platform, what we were doing already, lended itself perfectly to take a step away from the engineering world, take all the skills that I learned, and go try and fix the education system.
Fantastic.
So
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question, which is effectively you telling us exactly what TutorHive is. And I see you're wearing a TutorHive t-shirt. You should have brought me one.
Oh, man.
You can post one to me.
I'll send one over.
Yeah.
It said "Be the change" on the back.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
I'll show you really quickly.
Yeah, we've got time.
We were like, wanted some merch, so it
yeah,
says "Be the change" on the back.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
But no, it's so TutorHive.
Okay.
The concept's very simple. If you think back to school, who was your favourite teacher?
I'll say my mother, Mrs. Coker.
Mrs. Coker?
Yeah.
Okay. And who was your worst teacher?
I can't remember.
No? All right.
I can't remember.
Too many.
Well,
look, so the whole point is the teacher makes all the impact on the learner.
Okay.
So that teacher could inspire the learner, or they could push the learner away from a subject. And it's all down to that relationship between the student and the teacher. So what I used to do at the youth club was entirely that. So, certain kids will get on with certain volunteers better. There's better affinity, there's common interest, there's shared passion, shared hobby, shared interest. So that's the core principle. What we want to try and do is get Mrs. Coker to teach every single one of your subjects for you. So who is the best teacher for you? So the matching algorithm starts by understanding your educational requirements. Okay, I need to learn maths GCSEs. Fine, great, okay. And I want to learn online or whatever, that's fine. Basic stuff, that's okay. But then it goes through, okay, what do you like doing? So what do you do in your spare time when you're not doing podcasts? What's your hobbies? What's your interests?
Play golf.
Yeah, cool. So let's say you're struggling with physics and you like playing golf. What we would do, the matching algorithm says, okay, there's 101 physics teachers. but here's the top 6. All of them match on golf.
Okay.
And now you can choose. You've got a choice. But out of the long list of something like 1.5 million tutors in the UK and 3.3 million kids getting tutored every week, it's mental. It's a huge, huge sector that's really not talked about.
Okay.
It's
that's massive.
£7.5 billion
What
is the valuation of the private tuition sector. That's unregulated, no structure, lacks innovation, no quality standards. You know, it's like imagine private taxis before Uber. Right? The days where probably people don't remember anymore. These things have changed, right? But I would have to, if I had a number for someone who's a taxi company, I might be able to call them. I don't know if they're open, to see if they got a taxi that can take me from the station home. Right? That sort of archaic level, but even worse because the risks are higher because this is children in the mix and there's no safeguarding standards. On top of that, you've got this interesting push of increasing understanding and appreciation for neurodiversity, and kids with special educational needs is getting higher. As a result, what we've seen is there are 60% less spaces in schools this year than there were last year for kids with special educational needs, which pushes that need to the private tuition sector. But the private tuition sector is not a thing. It's just an unregulated market of loads of private tutors. And there are companies out there where like, that doesn't work. It's a broken model. So where we got to with this is, you know, my other co-founder who I met, he used to run a tuition centre, was trying to scale it. And what we thought was, you know, what if we did it in a tech-infused way? What if we could find the perfect teacher for a learner based on their hobbies, their interests, their shared passions? And would that be able to drive a match? So we've managed it. We locked out and we built the platform. The algorithm works phenomenally well. We've got a 93% first-time match rate. Whereas the industry standard is 33%. So it takes the average parent 3 times to get their kid tutored. And I don't know if you've had any experience trying to find tutors for your kids, right?
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
It's not.
How was your experience with it?
Well, I kind of had some family friends who helped when my kids were sort of needing tuition.
Yeah.
So that was, I didn't really, I mean, that's kind of what I fell back on, but not everyone would have that.
Exactly.
You know.
And so there's 2 problems with it fundamentally. I mean, there's lots of problems with it, but one is access to that network. If I haven't got family friends who are in a position where they can teach, because my social circle is the other
Very
immigrants
limited,
and it's limited, or you know, I'm not surrounded by that. I'm not fortunate to be in that position. Then, you know, that's one problem. It's also expensive. The average price per lesson is like £40 an hour, and you go to the average household that's got 2 kids, you're paying very quickly 320 quid a month on additional support for your kids because the school system can't support that. Tap that onto the cost of living crisis, the challenges in the workforce, all of that. You're now in a position where, you know, it's a tough space to be as a parent right now. So the other bit that we try to do is, okay, how do we make the price point accessible? So I can either have cheaper tutors, but then we've got to value the time of a teacher. And personally believe that teachers are woefully underpaid in the UK. So how do we do that? So we came across this idea of group lessons. And it's not new. It's you know, it's been done, but it's an absolute ball ache to try and set up. So imagine you're going out for dinner with 6 mates. You need to go and get them all to have pre-ordered a meal, prepaid, and get there for a certain time. Someone's going to mess up. So,
guaranteed.
You know exactly who that person is as well. There's always that one guy, one of your mates is going to rock up and be like, can I have some extra broccoli? It's like, why don't you just order it? You've prepaid. Now we got, it's like, it's a fact.
I get it.
And that's with 6 people who know each other trying to go for dinner. 6 strangers coming together with the complexities of the different levels, the needs, that's a hard thing for a tutor to manage. But it puts you in a position where you could build a model where you can charge the students like £15 an hour. You can pay the tutors £60 an hour, which is a phenomenal rate card. And we could take 30. So in a model where, we take 30%, but we built it that way. If it's a 1-to-1, we only take 10% from the tutor, which undercuts entirely the entire tutoring game. And so we thought, the model's broken, and we've kind of evolved this thought. We've got the marketplace, got a platform there, use AI to recommend the best tutor for a learner, and we've actually just launched TutorHive Black.
Okay.
TutorHive Black is an educational concierge.
Oh, okay.
So now you, as a parent, you get a WhatsApp chat. Super easy. It's in where you use everything else. You message the chat and say, hey, I need a tutor to come and explain chemistry GCSEs. My kid's struggling with this question. I don't know it. 10 minutes, a tutor's calling you.
Wow.
Even better, a link's been set through to your phone or to your email with a virtual classroom. The tutors are ready, and your kid can jump on there and then.
Wow.
Instant access, on-demand access to a tutor, wherever you are. You might be away, you might be on holiday, you might be here, it might be 8 p.m, you might already have a tutor, but you don't see them for another week. So, or you don't have a chemistry tutor, you just need to top up now. So this whole idea of on-demand, right when you need it, almost like the reason why Netflix exists. I don't want to wait for another week for my show to come out. I want to watch it now, right? Or online GPs. Again, I don't want to have to call up at 8 a.m. to book a slot to go and see my GP tomorrow. I just want to sort it out now. I have time now.
So it sounds like everything is virtual.
No, not entirely. So the online GP deploy helicopter and a tutor is virtual, correct?
Okay.
We recognise the need for, especially kids with special educational needs, there is a need for in-person. You're never going to stop that. Okay. And especially for younger kids, in-person is far better. Getting a kid to stare at a screen and comprehend that there's another person, especially at a young age, like 6, 7 years old, it's not worth it. The value's in person. As the child starts to mature, gets to year 9, year 10, GCSEs, A-levels, perfect. It's fine because you don't have to drive in all the traffic.
So how do you find places for these in-person? Is it people's homes or
homes? Yeah, homes. Okay. Or the parent goes to the home of the tutor. Now, for us, there's a lot more that we can do with online around assuring safeguarding, around doing sort of things like using AI to create lesson summaries, etc., etc. We're currently in the backlog looking at tech that enables us to safeguard a classroom in person, i.e. concepts around, you've got a phone. Can that be used to then monitor the quality of the lesson and etc. in the same way an online session would happen? There's lots of things that we're exploring, but taking it a step at a time, because there's no point introducing something like that if the need isn't there. And you've got to be mindful of data protection, data privacy, right? You can't just put something in a physical room and say, hey, by the way, there's a lot to work through with going down that route. But yeah, there is definitely a flex of online versus in person. I think the gearing is more online though. Okay. Parents are not, they haven't got time. Yeah. Like to take your kids somewhere, it's just stuck in traffic. So yeah, that's the.
I see. Do you have like a rating system? Like Uber has a rating system for drivers. Does that impact the selectability of a teacher?
Yes and no. Yes and no. So the right teacher for me might be entirely the wrong teacher for you.
Ah, okay.
So here's where.
So it goes back to your initial.
So if I go and say, just because I found teacher 5 stars, and you then base it on the stars, then that's not going to work, because it's that whole.
It's a bit more detailed than that.
So what we do to circumvent that, because there is an element of control and quality assurance of the tutors. So after every lesson, the student leaves feedback for the teacher, and the teacher leaves feedback for the student.
Okay.
And what that feedback does is 2 things. So if you are the teacher and you're leaving me feedback, that's closed. No one can see that. Only I can see that. Me, my parent account, etc. That's a closed thing. For me leaving feedback for you, that goes through a check to make sure it's appropriate and it's fine. And then that feedback is then shared. And we also then show the number of lessons taught. So that way we can show that this tutor's highly utilised. And this is what parents have said. Because it's still a word of mouth thing. Tutoring and learning and education is always a word of mouth. You want to hear the references, the feedback. You want to hear that. That's the key. So, but we can't weight it based on one person's experience. But we still have to maintain quality. So we use a bit of AI to go and scrape through all of the feedbacks that have been provided by the student to the teacher. If anything's off, we go and investigate. If it's online, we can watch the lessons back and check and, you know, be sure. Have the conversation with the tutors. We know them all. There's 400 odd, but we still know them all. And we can then go and say, actually, you know what? That's a fair bit of feedback, you know, and how can we help you? What can we do to help you be a better teacher? And that might be training, it might be special education needs awareness, it might be whatever it is. So we're starting to also train the tutors in a flexible way, whilst also making sure that, you know, there is some degree of waiting on, and you have everything from a school, a uni student might tutor, to a head of science at the best private schools also tutor. And the price varies from like £20 an hour to £100 an hour. And it entirely depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very, very. It looks like you've thought through this very deeply. I mean, how long did it take you and your partner to sort of, because every question I've asked you've sort of you've thought through it, right?
There's a lot. It takes time, right? So the idea originated in 2020. So mid 2020, COVID's hit. Everyone's stuck at home. The UK government brought out the National Tutoring Programme. 1.3 billion pounds has been spent on that, and that's a huge just for tutors to support the gaps in the education system. So we conceptualized the idea then. We went through the whole, right, let's build a mobile app. And that was a terrible idea. Horrendously bad idea, because mobile apps are really expensive. Because you've got to maintain it on Android and iOS.
Oh, okay.
And they don't necessarily, and there weren't the technologies then readily available to be able to code something that works on both seamlessly. You've got to do them separately. But the other bit is you don't actually do lessons on a phone. You do them on a laptop or a computer. So we thought, okay, fine, that is a good idea to have an app, for sure. And we will bring one out in due course. But what if we have a web app? So a web browser-based thing that you go to that works really well on your mobile. So for us, that was our approach of reducing the cost of delivery and actually just getting the product right before we work out what does it make sense to have a phone for. So in doing so, we spent, you know, January 2022, we kind of scrapped the mobile app, took the hard decision to eat that one up.
Had you spent money on it?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask how much.
Yeah, too much. And we started down the journey of building the web app. That took, you know, a lot of the stuff from that initial concept, the branding, the approach, the methodology, some of the ideas. We had things in there like a marketplace as well. You can buy and sell resources. But we popped that. There was almost too much that we were trying to do in one small
space
start, right? And we can evolve. We can add that in. Built the web app. Took us about 9 months to get that together. So by the time we got to October, we were able to launch. Loaded up with about 50 pilots. Went through January and that sort of almost about a year ago. This sort of January to March phase was alpha and beta testing. So alpha testing is ultimately you've built your first product. There's loads of problems, but people will still try it and help you, right? And they'll test it. So worked through those, did some fixes, pushed it out again, and got a huge amount of feedback. Started to get users using it over summer. We had like a little trickle of people just testing different bits, and then well and truly after we kind of taken all of that feedback, rebuilt some stuff over summer, we kind of pushed out for September this academic year. So September just gone. And from there we saw, okay, right, this now works. We've got people organically using the platform, using the Hive matching algorithm to find the right tutor. We've got people organically growing. We scaled the number of tutors. We hacked them down because we didn't have the right DBS checks and safeguarding in place for some of them. Like, you know, now it's more about operations and how do we get the user base to grow. And then we started looking at our model around the TutorHive Black thing only came about from January this year, we conceptualized the idea because we're like, the model is great, it works really well, but doesn't make any money.
Yeah. So you've created a funnel. You just got to,
Entirely. So now it's in growth mode. Now we're going through that journey. Tipped over 1,000 users, added different things into it like courses and this and that. But it's been a journey. So it's taken the best part of 3 years
to get to where you are. Yeah.
Probably 4, almost 4. So to kind of take it
from concept,
work on it, understand the levers. So one of our strategic objectives is to understand our business mechanics. And that's really important because there's a lot and there's many layers to it at a high level and then even to a super duper minute low level. So there's different bits to it.
Would you say your training as an engineer has helped in sort of your logical reasoning and problem solving, or would you say that there are other soft skills that you've sort of had to fall back on?
I think, I still think being an engineer is one of the best things because it forces you to learn processes.
Okay.
And build processes and approaches and stepping through things. You got to think in a methodical way. But a typical engineer hasn't got all the social skills and the soft skills. So it swings and roundabouts now. But I think being an engineer allowed me to come at the education problem in a very different way. If I was in the education system and I went through being a teacher or whatever, I would not have thought to this point. We would not have seen the wood from the trees. As your golfing analogy, right? Like you can't see it. You can't. But when you come from the other angle, your approach is from the other side. Now you can see exactly what others can't see. So I think there's an element of being an engineer gives you the process backdrop. It allows you to be technical. So I can dive into stuff and, with enough hitting my head against it, I'll be able to understand most bits of the code, the whatever it is. Like that's fine. It's more about how do you use that to then go and try and re-engineer another problem. And it's just problem solving. That's what all engineering is. So there's that. I think soft skills leading a business is tough. Like you've got all these other stuff that you didn't realize you needed to do. Like how do you grow your team? How do you develop them? How do you build a culture? What do you do when everything's set and then someone pulls the plug on a project that you're like, what? Like, since when? I was like, sorry, the budget's gone. Like, we've geared and we spent on this. Like, what do you mean it's gone? And they were like, no. So, and you're like, okay, now what, right? So there's a lot of stuff that I've had to learn along the way. I think spending time in a consultancy as well before, so an engineering consultancy, that experience helped. It taught me how to present, how to, build an idea, how to deploy things, how to think about things to the minute details, things like how much time are we spending on this versus that, what's my return on the investment here, and we're getting sharper and sharper as we develop as a company. But there's I think it's a mix. You do need some life working experience before going and starting a business. Okay. I think personally, I think
it helps. It doesn't hurt.
It just gives you a different way of thinking.
Perspective. Yeah.
So if you do want to go into a startup, go work for one first, then start your own. Go get that experience, or go work in a consultancy where you'll have that ability to go and push and learn and absorb, and then go and do it. Okay. So
So Rushab, somebody watching this podcast today, right? Because I know people who do tutoring, and I'm just thinking they'll be far better off on your platform. Yeah. Instead of doing just a one-on-one and all that. How does somebody who wants to join your platform join? And then also, how do people watching who need tutoring services, how do they find you?
Super easy. TutorHive.co.uk. Okay. Literally that. And so if you're a tutor, you're probably either in 2 buckets. One, you're a part-time tutor, one, you're a full-time tutor. People can make a lot of money tutoring. For the part-time tutors, you might be using a platform that is charging you 25%, 40% in some examples. And that's a big bite out of the money you're trying to make. Yeah. And it means you can't be as true to the parent or the kid because, you're giving them less time, less focus for zero value add. And then the flip side, if you're a parent, all you need to do is go to the platform, and on the website you can just search for tutors. But if you create an account, and we start to understand, the kids' hobbies, their interests. If we've got revision classes that are £10 an hour, it is so affordable because we can do group lessons. So we can make it financially viable for a tutor to do that because of the group session. So it's not just tutoring for those who can afford it, it's for those who need it. And so as a parent, you can create an account, and the algorithm will do the work for you. We can save so much time. So that's the benefits of coming through, and it's a no-brainer because if you genuinely value your time, your kids' education, your money, then why would you go and pay more for less? Right? It's just that, right?
It's a no-brainer. So I presume you're currently operating in the UK. Are there any plans to scale globally? Because I see this working in the US as well. The model is scalable.
And I think education is scalable. Education is universal, right? And when we looked at where we start, UK, it's at home, it's easy, it's kind of where we are. But then you look at the Middle East, you look at India, you look at China, you look at growth areas where education is highly regarded. The US is definitely one, but I'd be interested actually. Can you name me a UK-based company that's gone to the US and successfully taken the US market?
No, none that I'm aware of.
It's a tough one. Everyone looks to the US, say, let's go there.
Well, why do you think that is? Is that
it's the land where the hopes and dreams go to die? I think it's hard to cross the pond. I think genuinely, companies will look at the US, okay, we'll go to the US market, but the approach there is very different. If I go to the US with a British approach of, I've got to preserve revenue, I've got to build a sustainable business, we can't overstretch. Look at the adverts in the US, right? The US will literally take their competition to the cleaners in their adverts. They don't care. Yeah. And the British were like, oh, I can't offend that person. I know they're my competition. And Lidl started doing, you saw those price match things. Finally, they started doing something. But to compare that to the US will literally there's a Coke advert or a Pepsi advert. They take a can of Coke, the kid steps on it to go and reach the Pepsi thing. It's just that sort of. The US don't care. So I think there's an element of British companies and British culture. It's quite tough to break into the US market, and it's an expensive market to get into. So I think a lot of people, and also shipping too early. So our global expansion plans are there for sure. It's a core part of our growth. We currently have tutors, for example, in Italy who tutor on the platform because there was a couple. They wanted to go and learn Italian, but they were moving to Puglia, so south of Italy. And they don't want an Italian teacher teach them from Rome because the accents are different. Okay. So imagine you wanted to learn English and you happen to pick up a tutor from Manchester and you rock up in London. You're going to be so confused, right? But that's every single language. Yeah. So we've started exploring it where it makes sense and where there's need, but until we're happy with the product and we can ship the product and we're confident that we've built something that is scalable,
you can cookie cut
cross border.
Okay.
Because the platform can go wherever it wants. Anyone can sign up now. Today I spoke to someone who's a German-based geography teacher. She's like, can I use that? I was like, yeah, go for it. Fine, but I can't support as much as I can support here. There are bits that as the platform evolves. And when we get to that point, probably about sort of H2 2025, is when we start to kick into the global expansion play.
Yeah, someone's going to be watching this because I know lots of people who are in the VC space and might be interested in in investing in your company.
Yeah.
You probably have people lined up. I don't know.
Well, it's an interesting time. So the moment the UK came out with the recession, and that was the term, a lot of VC companies actually shrunk their capital deployment. Flip side, interest rates have been really good. So do I take a risk on investing in a startup, or do I put money into the bank and take my 6%, 8% return? The S&P 500 has been the highest it's been, right? Yeah. I just chuck some money into Nvidia and I'm just chilling. So there's an interesting dilemma where funding into startups is a lot harder than it was compared to where it was 2 years ago, where it was almost like a gold rush. Anyone with any idea with some slides could raise. So when we are fundraising, VCs are interesting. I'd rather look at angels.
Okay.
So angel investors are investors who high net worth individuals or have invested previously, and the reason they're good is because they'll have a network around them.
Okay.
And they will do it typically for the genuine desire to make a positive impact on the world.
Okay.
So what I don't want to do from an owner of the business point of view is take on money from someone who's not aligned to our vision.
Okay.
Because, and you see it, there's companies like, for example, Go Student. One of the biggest companies that got 512 million raised, and they started in 2016. Tutoring company, they get 17, 18-year-old tutors, pay them £13 an hour, charge them out for £33 an hour. That's their model. And initially, when they were growing, it was a phenomenal place to work. And spoken to plenty of their ex-employees, etc. Like, it was great. Took on too much money. Now they're in a position where they've got all the problems, because when you take money from a VC, you have to scale and give a 10x return.
Yeah.
The VC's looking for 10x, 100x returns,
Yeah.
and that may not be right for the business.
Yeah.
And it forces you to ship a bad product. It forces you to the US when you're not ready. It forces you to make decisions that are profit driven, not impact driven.
Okay.
And if you're trying to build a business in the education space, in particular, where the time horizons are longer, you need the understanding from your board, from your investors, your shareholders, that, this is going to work, but you have to be patient. You squeeze it too early, you throttle it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. Always happy to speak to investors though. I think at this point we're doing like a 600k raise, SAS, CIS. So yeah, for sure. But definitely open for a conversation.
Fantastic. Rushab, what do you think about this podcast and what we're trying to do? Honest opinion.
Straight up, spot on. I think there's no shortage of podcasts out there. Yeah, it's the thing. Everyone wants to talk between a fan. Right? But there's an element of representation across media, across anything, everything. And getting a voice out is never easy. Getting attraction, media type coverage is never easy. But a lot of these people pay to play. Like, if you didn't realise, a lot of the stuff people are paying to be in that news article. Yeah. Like all those 30 under 30s stuff, it's all paid.
Yeah.
I had someone reach out to me with ideas like, hey, we've been nominating you for 30 under 30 for this thing. I was like, oh, sweet, that's cool. Oh, here's how much it is. Like, what? What do you mean you got to pay for this? I thought it was like a recognised.
Yeah.
I thought someone genuinely thought I was doing something good. I was like, this is cool.
I genuinely think you're doing something good, honestly.
Yeah, so I think there's an element of, in fact, the amount of a good tell in how successful as a sector or a group or representation is how much money is getting invested into it, especially in the startup world and the tech world. It's all about how much money is being ploughed into that demographic. And I think something like the UK Asian population is bigger than Norway.
Okay.
It's population. It's mental. But it's like aggressively underserved by venture capital funding. So, and it's the same when you look at leadership at boards across organizations. You look at successful founders that have exited, etc. The money's all Silicon Valley. You've got a few highlight companies. The representation's not there, so you're never going to see anyone take a chance on something different. And it's the whole idea. If I've got 5 people in the room, they all think in the same way, I can guarantee the answer is going to be the same. There's no disruption. This is why companies with successful founders came from completely different sectors, right? For example, Elon Musk has got no reason to be in space. Yeah, he's the only person who successfully privatized space, right? Came from PayPal. Cars, completely different. Tesla, right?
Yeah.
Again, no matter how much they get slammed, they have quite frankly, undone a really laggard legacy sector. Right? They still have the best electric cars, hands down. Yeah, fine. There's some manufacturing challenges, growing pains, which is there.
To be expected, yeah.
But the capital outlay to build a car is huge. Whilst Mercedes, BMW are still faffing around. They haven't really got a true product that's comparable. So you've got to have that diversity of thought, which I've always been motivated and said comes from diversity in the room that you're in. Okay. So again, another example, when I was at Ricardo, an engineering consultancy, male Palesdale, classic engineering through and through. But again, set up a forum I set up 2 forums. One was women in engineering, and the other one was ethnic forum. Again, just to get people to come around, surround the Black Lives Matter stuff kicked off, and the company didn't say anything about it. And I was like, that's poor. And I asked why. And they're like, oh, we didn't think it was an issue. I was like, you mad? What do you mean you didn't think it was an issue?
Yeah.
And then I was like, do you realise why you didn't think it was an issue? They're like, no. And I went to the board. I was like, look at the board. Look around. Who's going to flag this as an issue in the room? And that's the problem. And so, yeah, more you can do to share stories, more you can do with defying those odds, right? The more you can do to create a platform to share, the better.
Rushab, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I'm really excited about the things that you're doing, and we also have a tradition on this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate the episodes that they feature on to anyone or any group of people of their choice. So who would you like to dedicate this episode to? And you're more than welcome to look at the camera for that.
I'm going to dedicate this episode. You know what? It's to the team that I left in the office. They're working hard today, and we've been working hard as a team. So yeah, it's to Bapi, the other co-founder, Naveed, the CTO, Santos, junior sales exec, Damien, the new head of sales, Phoebe. So yeah, to you guys, keep smashing it, and let's go be the change.
Be the change. I like that.
That's it.
If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd like you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I mean, if you follow this channel, because I started this channel purely by chance on a golfing trip to Portugal, but then it's growing, and the bigger we get, the more guests I'll be able to bring on this platform to share inspirational stories. Okay. I can't do it by myself, but with your your sharing, your subscribing, we can build this together. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Shah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.